After a short, intense campaign, Canadians casted their votes, giving Prime Minister Mark Carney and the Liberal Party a fourth term, which might have been unthinkable a short few months ago. But now it's time to deliver. So the question is, what happens next, how, and what should we be watching for? Here to help us understand all of that is the Honourable Frank McKenna, Deputy Chair, Wholesale Banking, TD Bank Group, also former Premier of New Brunswick and former Canadian Ambassador to the U.S., and Beata Karrantze, TD's Chief Economist. It is lovely to have you both here.
Thank you.
So I gave my laundry list of what I want to talk about the next 22 minutes, so good luck to you both, because there's a lot here. But before I jump into the mechanics, just your reaction to what happened, Frank.
Well, it's a roller coaster ride. How can I put it? 3 months ago, I thought the Liberal Party was going to lose official status and be wiped off the board. And then Trump went crazy, and we ended up getting Trudeau leaving. And then all of a sudden, Central Casting produced this guy, Mark Carney, who looked like he was tailor-made to deal with this kind of a crisis: cool, calm, cerebral, et cetera, et cetera. And so we went from that, and then 2 weeks ago I thought it was going to be quite a significant Liberal majority. And then the last 2 days you could watch the polling moving the other direction, and we ended up what we had last night, which was a significant, we would call it a strong minority government.
Yeah, it is a strong minority, but certainly the mechanics and the way in which things will get done in the future is going to be different because of how things came about.
Yeah, just one quick thing. It's not only a strong minority because of the numbers, which is almost a majority, but also because there are three different parties who could be dance partners.
Right.
The Conservative Party, the Bloc, and the NDP.
Well, let's just, and yeah, we'll get to the economics, I promise. I'm going to start with the politics first, but let's talk about the mechanics of how things get done, because I think I was listening to some other folks today about how the government will put things forward. You mentioned there's different dance partners from that standpoint. So he has to negotiate with the opposition, but when you think about the things that Canadian government has been promising, like getting rid of interprovincial trade barriers, there's negotiations with the provinces that have to happen. And then, of course, there's negotiation with the gentleman south of the border, President Trump. There's a lot that has to get done. So are you concerned about all the parties that have to align to get Canada where it needs to go?
Actually, I think there's pretty good alignment, because I think the public have sent a clear message. And that is that we are facing an existential crisis. We know that. And we're putting you in Ottawa to make the system work. Mm-hmm. And I think any opposition party that doesn't be constructive would end up paying a big price for that. Mm-hmm. And I think similarly, the government will pay a price if they are arrogant and don't consult and work with other parties, provinces and other parties. So I'm actually quite optimistic. I think if you take the major platforms, the Liberal Conservative platforms, there's quite a lot of alignment on some of the things that need to be done. Enough alignment that I think can keep you busy for quite a period of time.
Let me ask, I want to dig on the interprovincial start, because I think that's going to be something that's easier said than done. But before I do, how do you feel about where Canada is right now, given the mandate that has come through? And what do you think should be Prime Minister Carney's priorities in the first 100 days?
Well, Canada was starting on a strong foot coming into the cycle for 2025. It's certainly lost a tremendous amount of momentum. So most apparent is within the housing market that was ending last year quite strong and has been gutted on sales. So clearly he's going to need to focus on domestic fundamentals and to make sure those drivers are supported, but you have to tackle Trump right out of the gate. And that's going to be a priority. If you don't reduce the uncertainty on the trade front, it's going to be very difficult to get businesses to have the confidence to invest. And even if they're trying to reorient to other export markets, you still need to have a better understanding of what your cost structures look like. If you are importing product from the US, we import a tremendous amount of our machinery and equipment from the US. So you just got to get that solved. So he will have to almost follow a dual mandate of simultaneously strengthening the domestic economy with policies while tackling the uncertainty and trying to get that mitigated as much as possible on the US front.
While battling a recession.
Well, that's where the domestic policy comes into play. And so the extent to which they can shore up confidence and get some of the legislative outcomes in infrastructure spending and make some positive inroads if they can draw in some foreign investment and make some positive inroads in delayering regulation in the resource sector. Half the battle is sentiment when it comes to business investment, so you just got to get the sentiment side up.
Frank, what do you think about that in terms of just that in the first 100 days? Because I don't think I've yet to meet anybody who disagrees with the why all these things have to be done. Everyone agrees.
Yeah.
It's the how.
Yeah, I think so. I loved listening to Beat on that, because the one person in Canada to understand every word that she's saying is Mark Carney. He's an egghead. I don't mean that in a critical way. It's just that he's steeped in this, and so he'll understand all of that. I think that there are a number of things that are doable. The tax cut. The Conservatives and the Liberals had different ones, but there's some overlap. They could do that. I think the investment in a national energy corridor, I think there's some degree of consensus amongst premiers on that. I think Trans Mountain Pipeline represents a very quick victory for them if they can start to work on debottlenecking that and getting more production through the Trans-Canada Pipeline. Pathways would be another one, $20 or $30 billion item, if they can get Alberta and the Government of Canada lined up on that. Interprovincial trade barriers, which you mentioned, the degree of consensus is considerable. The Government of Canada is going to legislate out all federal preferences, so they can do that. In the case of the provinces, I think it's moral suasion. The Government of Canada is going to really push them hard, and the provinces are going to feel the pressure from their citizens. Look, having been a premier, I can tell you we're going to fight and kick and scream all the way on this one. We will give up certain areas, but the real pain points is where the real productivity comes from, and it's going to be hard to push through that.
I wonder, and not to keep belaboring this, but I just, in a previous life, I remember working for an organization, a company that, breweries had to be in certain provinces because you had to have them, pulp and paper mills have to be in certain places. Like, it's easy to say interprovincial trade barriers. It's harder to say we're shutting down your mill and we're opening it over here. Like that, those are hard.
Well, they are hard. In the case of Newfoundland, they have 2 breweries, and they'll lose both of them probably if they completely open the Kimona and provincial trade. So they're trying to protect that. But also in the case of Newfoundland, they've got a massive fishing industry, and they have rules requiring that fish to be processed in Newfoundland. If they didn't, it could all theoretically be shipped somewhere else, and they would lose tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of jobs. So those are real significant barriers and real pain points if you try to blast through them. There are other ones that are easier. I still think that honeybees should be able to go from New Brunswick to Nova Scotia without being stopped at the border.
Yeah, all right. I want to ask both of you, when you look at the platform that Prime Minister Carney put out as part of the very fast election, so people didn't get probably as much time as they would have normally to get into it. I want to take a look at some of the initiatives and where you think they could be, but you made a comment as you walked into studio talking about just maybe what is needed to really do what needs to be done. And you used even wartime spending as a thought around that. So I'm going to ask you before we get to the platform, is there enough here to do what needs to be done?
On the surface, I would say the financial backing behind these programs is probably too low. And I think many people would not like that because the debt to GDP ratio is rising under the platforms. I think the challenge is when we did the math, if you look at where debt to GDP was going before these initiatives under the Liberal platform and after, that's about a 3 percentage point swing, which equates to about $90 billion. Now, if you believe that we are in an economic wartime period where we have to reorient supply chains and the industrial composition of the country, $90 billion additional in spending is probably not going to do it. And you need significant public-private partnerships, which Mark Carney is talking about, but you are really creating industries that are lacking in scale or even presence in Canada. And so this is a significant amount of time and investment. It also simultaneously requires speed. We don't have 2 decades to get there. We want to minimize the pain to Canadians. And so it would suggest that, Mark Carney is probably the right person at the helm because he's done financial crises in the past. This is going to be an economic crisis. It will require quite a proficient government to move all the different things that they want to do. We're talking infrastructure reorientation, resource reorientation, auto sector, You can pick
Defense,
a lane, more
Arctic,
affordable housing.
everything,
It's
yeah.
everything. So
Yeah.
they're going to have to start with some priorities and then move with speed.
Not the conversation I would have expected from Beata. I would have expected that from you. So now you get to play the part of Beata and you tell me, does that make sense, or do you agree?
Well, I think it's tailor-made again for somebody like Carney, because
Yeah.
he understands all of this, and he'll understand how we need to induce demand, and he'll understand all of that. I think they could move on the tax cuts very quickly, whether that moves the yardstick at all. It does increase the deficit, but could
To
they do that?
incent business to do more.
And then, we don't know what we don't know. For example, can we get to a trade deal, a comprehensive trade deal, reasonably quick? If we can, not only will that settle things down, but it'll probably excite the animal spirits as well. And
How reasonable is that, though, getting to a deal quickly? Because, I mean, again, the complexity of this deal, I mean, this is one of the most complex in the world, is it not?
Well, NAFTA was negotiated before, and we do have a framework. It's not like it's a standing stop.
Right.
We do have a framework, and I don't think it's mission impossible that we get to a deal. All of the individual elements we know. I think we should add new elements to it, like softwood lumber, for example, guns, which probably makes it
So
more.
adding Canadian issues on top of the ones
Yeah,
they're
I don't know
tabling.
why they should just get to create the issues, right? We've got issues too. There's $10 billion in softwood lumber escrow account. We should be trying to deal with things like that. But some of the elements, for example, autos, they're already backing down on
Yeah.
some of that because it doesn't make any industrial sense to unravel all of that. So if you could get that settled down, if you could get something on steel and aluminum, and in fact, they're pulling back. I think one of the concessions they're going to make is that steel and aluminum goes tariff-free to the auto sector. And it's nuts for them to have aluminum tariffed at 25% when we're the ones that provide their aluminum. I mean, they're paying the tariff. So if we could end up winning a few of those contests, right now people act as if we're being tariffed 25%. If you're NAFTA compliant, there is no tariff. So it's not as bad as it seems on the surface. It's these other tariffs that he's got, sector-specific ones that he's either got or bringing more of them out. I still think, Kim, one of the things that we have to remember is that pain is part of the curing here. When the United States is feeling pain in the treasury market or the currency or in terms of consumer spending, that is helping to contribute to backing these people off this agenda. And so I think there'll be quite a lot of pain to go around, but at the end of the day, it may settle everybody down, realize that this is mutually assured destruction, and that we have to figure this out and we have to work together. So,
And if I can add,
Yep.
I think we just have to rethink. So we know when we did NAFTA and the USMCA was about 1.5 years of negotiations, and you have to go get it ratified and go through your legislative process. I don't think that's what we're expecting in this process to settle the markets down. All you need is a framework or an understanding of where you're going. And then you can work out the particulars of the deal over time and then go through the legislative process that would need to happen in Canada and the US and Mexico. But they're not negotiating just with Canada and Mexico like in Trump 1.0 and China. They have 200 countries on their list. So they will have to tackle many things on the surface and get frameworks and understandings in place and talk about probably monitoring, although they still can't monitor this many countries. And then we'll see more specifics in terms of written legislative outcomes way into the future. I don't think that's the goal that we plan to reach in the next 3 to 6 months. So it may seem quite Herculean to think through the renegotiation
Right.
of the USMCA.
But it's the framework.
But we're really talking about, do we have a framework of understanding and agreement?
Let's talk about, I said I was going to do it last time, and then I got sidetracked listening to some of the Herculean things that we have to figure out. But initiatives, what the plan is for the Liberal platform, what's going to be spent. I want to get your takes on, how important these are and how doable they are. So Beata, I'll start with you. Infrastructure building, east-west corridors, and they talk about nation-building projects. Diversification fund, railroads, bridges, a $2 billion Arctic strategy. I mean, these are big, exciting initiatives, but Are they all doable at this price?
Anything's doable.
I mean, you do have the right person to do it. We can go there, but
It's usually your environmental assessments and especially when you're going across provinces, making sure that you have buy-in on the development side, construction costs, finding the labor, moving the labor. So these are multi-year and likely decade when you take it across end to end across the country. Ports and things like that, I think you can move with a bit more speed, especially if you're increasing capacity, deepening dredging, things like that.
yeah.
Creating a ship industry when you don't have scale,
Yeah.
that takes time. So all visionary ideas, right? So they're aspirational and
Yeah.
they're set on the right markers. But this is why you have to sort of pick a lane in these. What are you prioritizing, and how do you mobilize the resources? Because we don't have the resources in Canada to do everything simultaneously.
Yeah. They talk about the major federal project office. By the way, all this information is coming from a great TD Economics report that was put out by your team. So, but that seems important. You know, we talk about, I think you were setting in your report is 18 years to bring a mine to life, and that's half the battle right now.
Yeah, well, the Ring of Fire, I started working on that 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Ed Clark asked me to look into it and what could we do, and we're still working.
Here we are.
on it. Yeah,
Although
but
the timeline's got longer.
yeah, the timelines. But remember, in the Second World War, the Alaskan Highway was built 13 miles a day of highway. New highway was built because they had to. When you have to do stuff, sometimes you can get it done quicker. The problem that we're going to have is getting through the bureaucratic layers that we've put in there. And so there have been a number of things that are important. They've agreed one project, one assessment. That's really
Yes.
important.
Yeah.
They have agreed they're going to be fast tracking different projects, and that's really important. And at some point we're going to have to break some eggs here. The expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, according to them, according to everybody, that's to debottleneck and add about 300,000 barrels a day. Same route, same everything. 5 years is what they would expect it would take to get approval to do that and get it done. But they believe fast tracking it and kind of breaking through all the barriers, they could all get done in 2 years. Well, let's make it a year.
Yeah.
Or 18 months or something. Let's get at this stuff and get everybody in a room and roll up the sleeves and get at it. And that's going to be the biggest problem, is breaking through all of the institutional barriers to getting stuff done.
Like if you take that 18-year example on end-to-end process on developing a mine in Canada, and you look at, say, Australia, similar in scale and scope to Canada, or the US, they are in the 12 to 15-year range on developing. So what we're trying to do is, at best, just get to where they are. That's still probably not going to compel a surge of an investment.
What would China be?
Oh, God. Probably get down to weeks.
Yeah. And people have often seen.
You don't want to do with
there's
the environmental
things.
degradation that would happen and the labor work rights.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately, this is what I think Frank's talking about. Like, I think we need to think through this as what's our moonshot here?
Yeah.
I like that.
That we can't be thinking, if you're thinking this is an economic wartime effort, you can't trim on the margins.
Yeah.
You have to really go at it, and this is where the speed comes in, but making sure you're proficient at doing it. Hence, pick something that you think you can do well, learn, and then you take it to the next project, and you take it to the next project. And so from the resource development perspective, our goal shouldn't be to get the mine down to 15 years. Can we get it down to 7 years? And the question to ask is, what does it take to get it to 7 years? And you start there and you back out your processes that make that possible. So I think, Carney's talking about getting into a permit process that's 2 years. Okay, and then what about everything else?
Yeah.
Right?
I want to, we're not going to have the time, unfortunately, because there's just this too big to talk about, resource project development, even more defense spending, like all the things. I just want to ask, we've got a couple minutes left. What are maybe the hidden opportunities that we're not thinking about for sectors or for growth within Canada within all of this? I mean, because I think, part of this is really exciting and part of it's really scary, but if it's done right, there's lots of opportunity.
I think everything we pointed to as a challenge is actually an opportunity.
Yeah.
right? So this is a terrific opportunity for infrastructure development. I don't think you'll find a Canadian out there who thinks we've nailed that.
Yeah.
Everybody's struggling with it, even in the urban centers as well as rural. So I think some improvements there are terrific opportunities. If we can become a reliable, and I think we would, a political, stable nation, that would look terrific for other countries looking to source from Canada, buy from Canada, and invest in Canada.
Yeah.
So we have a very good reputation there, and I think we just have to strengthen the competitive business argument. That's where we've fallen down, that we don't have a compelling argument of why invest in Canada from a competitive perspective and an ease of doing business perspective.
I've got 30 seconds, Frank.
Yeah, so I think one opportunity is around defense. We're going to have to spend $15 billion a year, probably, in order to catch up to our commitments. And a commitment has been made to create a special office in order to facilitate those investments. Those investments, I can't tell you they'll be done instantly, but we can do a lot of them and get credit for it around AI, cybersecurity, and so on, and use all of that intellectual capital then to help fuel industries, which is what Israel does and which is what the United States does. I can't promise that that'll be instant. I can promise that if we do it right, we will end up creating a lot of important economic activity within this country. The other thing I just want to say, we've got a chance here. It's a little different from money, and that's bringing some of the richest pool of talents in the world in from the United States.
Yeah.
People who want to leave that country and come to ours.